Welcome to the Yoga Therapy Hour in 2025. My name is Amy Wheeler, and I'm your host. In Season 8, we are asking people to come and talk about their stories of personal healing, gaining their health back on multiple layers of their human beingness. Could be physical, could be energetic, could be mental, emotional, personality, relationships, or even spiritual. So, how have you been healed as a result of a long-term practice of yoga, yoga therapy, or Ayurveda? That's what we're doing in 2025. So, I wanted to start the year off by telling you one of the biggest ways that yoga has helped me as a human being heal. And one of my teachers, TKV Deskachar, says, yoga is relationship. That it's through our relations, our interactions, our way of being in the world, that we know if our yoga is working. So one of my biggest areas, although I have healed neck pain, I have healed autoimmune disease through lifestyle changes and my yoga and Ayurveda practices, I have healed anxiety. I have healed insomnia. There's so many ways I could tell you. I have learned to trust the divine more deeply. But the way that I want to talk about how I've been healed today is something around being more comfortable in relationship and trusting myself in relationship and having clarity in my relationships. Because honestly, those are the things that cause me the most suffering. That when my relationships are not doing well, I'm not doing well. And I know a lot of you can relate. So for this particular episode, I want to focus on that, how we are in relationship to one another. Welcome to the Yoga Therapy Hour. I'm Amy Wheeler, your host. Are you needing to earn some continuing education units? Well, we have the exact thing for you. Every single Monday night, we have a Monday night clinic where we practice postures, breathing, and meditation towards a very specific theme of the month. And then we stay afterwards and we talk about the theory of why we chose what we did for that particular practice. We give you a completion certificate, which you can turn into your continuing education body. And we're growing all the time. We have a wonderful community. You can do this live with us online, or you can do it through a recording. Go to www.theoptimalstate.com and check out the Monday Night Clinic, and we would love to see you there. So the Yoga Sutra that really stands out for me with respect to this is Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, Chapter 1, Verse 33. Some of you know this sutra. And I love this sutra because it gives us very clear guidelines about how to get our own mind to be pleasant, to be at ease. And yes, what will result is better relationships with other human beings too. But the most important reason we're doing it is for ourselves. So although when you hear this Yoga Sutra and how it has healed so many people over the years, you may think, oh, that's about the others. How are you treating the others? That is an outcome that happens, but it's really about what is the work that's happening inside of you and how does it make you feel? So let's go ahead and get started. I'll just say the sutra. I won't make you listen to me chant. Yoga Sutra 1.33, Maitrī Karunā Muditā Upekṣā Sukha Dukkha Punya Apunya Vishayanam Bhavanatahas Chitta Prasadanam. What do all those words mean? Well, let us break it down and apply it to our daily living and how we can suffer less in our relationships. I'm going to put up on the screen the words that I just said so that if you're watching this on YouTube or you're part of our Patreon group, sometimes we give some little extra gifts to those who help sustain the podcast. You can see this. Now, if you're listening to the audio version, obviously you're not going to see this, but I've created this, what I call the Yoga Sutra Dictionary, as it applies to the context of yoga therapy, because that's a little bit different than the Yoga Sutras applied to liberation or enlightenment. We're mainly talking in yoga therapy about health and healing, and maybe just a little bit of going beyond. So, how can this help us in our daily living? First of all, Maitrī. When someone is friendly, when they're kind, when they are willing to be in relationship with you and being a good friend, you too should do that. Seems so simple, right? Someone's being kind to you, they're being friendly, you should be kind, you should be friendly. Now, where does this get us into trouble? In our daily lives, there are people who don't prioritize us, who have many, many things to do. And it may be true that we're not their top priority. Maybe they have children they need to take care of, or a spouse, or maybe they're trying to make a living. Those are valid reasons that they can't be in deep relationship with us. But I think where we get into trouble is we keep putting more out to try to connect with them and make up for the space and the difference. And we worry and wonder, is it something I did? Should I try to connect with them more? And I just want to ask you, would you be willing to match their energy and not take it personally and not judge them and not have a bunch of thoughts and ruminations and stories or biases about why the relationship isn't as close as you might like? Can you match energy? Can you match time? Can you match focus? And that could go from a romantic relationship all the way to a friendship, a colleague, a boss. I had a friend tell me once that people will treat you how you let them treat you. And I never forgot that. This particular friend put a lot of effort and focus into our relationship, and she actually wanted the same from me. And if I wasn't willing to do that, we probably were not going to be very close. That was just how it was. That was her theory. But I always remember that. And you know what? I put more focus, energy, attention into my relationship with her because I value it. And we were both caretaking one another. We were taking care of the relationship. So in the very first instance, out of the 4 that we're going to talk about today, can you be friendly to those who are friendly to you? Can you be a good friend to those who are a good friend to you? And those who aren't, well, we'll talk about that later. What are your options then? And having discernment, it's very hard. All right, the next one, Karunā, which is compassion. Can you have compassion towards people who are suffering? Now, we need to differentiate between compassion and empathy. Empathy meaning I feel what you feel. I feel so deeply that when you're hurting and you're suffering, I go to bed at night and my heart hurts and I'm suffering. That's not the word that Patanjali is using here. Patanjali is saying compassion. Can you put yourself in the shoes of another and imagine how they might be feeling, but not completely taking that feeling on yourself? So some of you are not that great at taking someone else's perspective and imagining how they might be feeling, but others of you are doing far too much of this. And you're taking on everyone else's perspective. You're people pleasing. You're not taking care of yourself. And you're not matching energy like we saw in number 1. So as you express your compassion, I'm not saying it has to be tit for tat that, oh, if you're not compassionate to me, I'm not going to be towards you, because there's so many deserving people of compassion in the world. What I am saying is that we have to do it with correct, right action. And many of you are overly compassionate to the point of harming yourself and burnout and compassion fatigue. And then others of you have no idea how to be compassionate because you've had to survive out there in the world. And you got to take care of yourself. If you don't take care of yourself, nobody will. And therefore you have more of a self-serving attitude. And it's really hard for you to become compassionate and take the other person's perspective and to step into their shoes and see what they might be feeling. So just think about that. What is right action for the person that you want to give compassion to? But also, what is right action for you? How much do you have to give? Are you burnt out? Do you have compassion fatigue? Are you being overly empathetic where you are just taking too much on? You have to look at your internal resources and your external resources to determine how much compassion you can give. Now, I was listening to the Polyvagal Institute has an amazing introductory course to polyvagal theory. And one of their instructors is named Nikki Elliott. And I am telling you, she hit it out of the park. She said something to the effect of, you don't have to do everything for everyone because you're feeling so compassionate. You can mobilize community. She calls it community is medicine. You can mobilize community to do far bigger things than you can do on your own. And one of the examples she gave is when she sees someone that has lost their home, she could either write a check for $2,500 for the rent, which she doesn't have, and that would end up hurting her and her family. Or she could try to do something to mobilize her community to have compassion for this deserving person, and that the effects could be far bigger. So I'd like you to think about that as you think about compassion, that it's not all on your back. You don't have to fix everything all the time. And what can you do to mobilize resources using your community when you find someone that's deserving of compassion? All right, so now let us look at the third one, Muditā. Can you be appreciative of people who are doing right action, doing good things in the world? Can you fill your mind with that? Can you fill your relationships with people doing good things in the world? You know, one of the things that I think we all do is we spend far too much time and energy on people who are not caring for us and they're not doing good things in the world. Now, I am the first to admit that each of us trying to determine what's a good action, what's a bad action, who's the good guy, who's the bad guy, it gets really, really sticky and really messy. And it's very easy for one team to call the other team evil when everybody has the same underlying needs, but they're just choosing different strategies to meet those needs. And then we tell the other person, oh, you're evil because you chose that strategy to meet the same need that I want met. And I'm choosing the strategy and mine is good and yours is bad. So I think we do have to be a little bit careful about getting on our high horse and calling everything evil and they're the bad ones and we're the good ones. That leads to war. That leads to misunderstanding. It leads to violence. So that's number one, is trying to figure out, what does that mean when I appreciate someone who's doing good deeds? And I would say it's pretty easy to see who are the people who are caring for one another, who are the benevolent ones, who are the kind ones, who are volunteering, who are giving their life force towards something larger than themselves. Who are the ones that you feel good when you come into contact with, that you feel light and expansive and inspired by? Who are the ones that are doing it behind the scenes and not expecting any reward or any gold medal? Who are the ones that are just working hard to benefit society, humanity? It should be easy to find those people. We should be able to agree on that and tell them how much you appreciate them. And I don't mean just say, oh, I appreciate you. This is so nice of you. Let's take it a whole nother level. Do you still write thank you notes? Get yourself a big fat pack of thank you notes, pretty notes that you can write it down and send it to people. They will be so surprised. If you can't do that, can you write emails? Can you set your mind towards finding 5 people you want to say thank you to, or I appreciate you every single day? Like that's your goal. I got to find 5 and roam around any of the social media platforms and give compliments and tell people that you love what they're doing. It's really not that hard once you set your mind to it. Now, here's part 2, and this comes from Nonviolent Communication with Marshall Rosenberg. And that is to say, I appreciate what you're doing because my need for XYZ was met when I saw you do that. So it might be when I saw you handing out food at the homeless shelter, my need for having us build community and seeing you help build our community was met. So you tell them how it impacted you, not just thank you, but when you did X, this is how it impacted me. This is how it landed with me. This is what felt good. This is specifically what I liked about what you're doing for me or for someone else. And when you do that, it's a whole nother level of appreciation because it's mirroring back to them like, wow, I make a difference. I'm valuable. So think about that. When you give compliments and appreciation, talk about how it impacted you in such a positive way, specifically how it impacted you, and then what needs were met. Was your need for joy met? Was your need for play met? Was your need for competence met? Was your need for consistency met? Just tell them, this is how it landed in me, and this is why I'm so grateful. Gratitude is an amazing thing, and the more we practice it, science shows, the better it gets, the better we feel. Of course, the other person feels good, but the better we feel. All right, let's go to our next one. This is the hard one, Upekṣā. Upekṣā for people who are doing bad actions and evil actions. And this is going back to what I just said a few minutes ago. That's kind of tough. It's actually quite tough because we can all think that I'm doing the good things, you're doing the bad things. It will be very interesting if there is something as we have our life review after our last breath. It will be interesting to see how many of us were actually perceiving accurately and how many of us thought we were doing good actions, but actually we were misperceiving. We actually weren't doing great things. We were excluding people. We were hurting people unintentionally and sometimes even intentionally. So the first thing I think is to try to get clarity about that and try to be less judgmental. Now, how do we do it then? How do we create space or distance? How do we stay away from people who are not doing good things in the world without having a judgment about them? That's really the crux of it. So discerning, that action doesn't feel good, or I can see that's not going to end well for them or for me. Like there's certain things that are pretty easy to see if we're just honest with ourselves and we're not telling ourselves a story and justifying it. But there's other things that it's really harder to tell that we will not know until later looking back. But if in your heart of hearts, in your somatic body, and in your mind, you think someone is doing something that lacks integrity, that isn't a good thing, you must have the discernment to create space and to get away from that person, place, or thing. And that's hard because so many of us want to dive in and fix it. Okay, now we have to ask ourselves, is this right action for me at this time? Which goes back to Bhagavad Gita. There's a heck of a lot of problems in the world, but am I the right person to solve that problem? Or is that problem actually for someone else that has more knowledge, more skills, more connection? This is not to convince you not to go out and try to take action in the world. It's try to help you get clarity about what's yours to resolve and what you actually have the capacity to make a difference with. So is this for me or is this for someone else? Is this for me at this time? Do I have the internal and external resources to be the one to try to fix whatever this evil person is doing? And is this something that if I step in and do this, I can handle the consequences? And again, it sounds like I'm trying to convince you not to go out and do good things in the world. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying what one of my mentors once shared with me, which was, Amy, It's not for you to solve every single person's problem at all times, in all places. That is your ego. That was kind of a harsh thing to hear. Like, ooh, she said, you need to trust that there's something larger than you at work. You need to trust that there are other people that are going to step in. And you also need to trust that you're not the best person for every single job. And you need to leave that space open for somebody who is going to be way better at that job than you are. So that gave me a lot to think about, that sometimes when we think we're doing such great things in the world and we're stopping evil, we're actually just feeding our own ego and harming. We're actually harming because we're not the best person for the job. We're judging everybody. We're putting hate out there into the world against whomever we're trying to put hate out against. It's rough. We have to really watch ourselves. And I think at this point in history, with all that's going on in the world, we cannot go wrong if we get off social media and stop yelling at each other through social media and being keyboard warriors to tell everybody else what they're doing wrong and why we're so right and, how they should do it better. Like, that is a cop-out. Come on. Let's stop all that. Get busy in your local community, full stop. You want to help? You want to do good in the world? You want to stop evil? Get yourself to the local community and start making lunches. Start shoveling the sidewalk of your neighbor. Start standing up for people in your community who have less than you that you can take a stand for. Like, do it on a local level. That is exactly what's going to help the world right now. If we all get busy with the human beings who are side by side with us in the grocery store, in the parking lot, at the chiropractor, at the vet, that's where we need to go. And a lot of us don't want to do that. We would rather fight the fight on Facebook and Instagram and think we're doing great work and telling everybody else how bad they are. That's so much easier, but it actually doesn't do a damn thing. Excuse my French. So when we look at Upekṣā and decide that, okay, this is a person I don't actually want to be connected with, you get to create space. You get to create distance. And that's that. I mean, and it also goes back to number one. When people are not valuing you, when they're not taking time for you, when they're not being a good friend to you, whether it's just that they're really busy trying to live life and make a living and they have too many responsibilities, if that's the case, let's not judge, but also know that there are other people, places, and situations where we could put our time and energy into instead of pining away, waiting for this person to finally be our good friend. We can send them love, we can have non-judgment, and we can let the space grow, and it's okay. And if they do end up being bad people, all the better, get away. I think for most of life, I have given, and I'm sure some of you can relate to this, people way too many opportunities to not be a good friend, to not make time, to maybe do nasty things like gossip behind your back. I think a lot of us, especially in the yoga community, have been so compassionate and so empathetic and so people-pleasing and spiritually bypassing that we've given too much opportunity to not be treated well. And we haven't had that discernment of Upekṣā. Now, that's not everybody. Some of you really, really need to work on being more friendly, being more appreciative, and being more compassionate. But do it with discernment. I had a class on Monday night about this Yoga Sutra. We did a whole Monday night class where we covered the sutra. We had a little lecture about it. Then we did asana, pranayama, yoga nidra meditation. And it was all themed around this Yoga Sutra, which is kind of what got me started this week on this podcast. So when we went through all of that, some of the participants said, I have read this sutra for so many years, and it is so hard for me, and I'm still so terrible at it. What would you recommend that I do more of? And my answer was, we are human. We are imperfect. We lose it daily. We are not regulated. We are awful to people. Like, that is part of being human. So all we can do is, number one, not expect perfection. Number two, be gentle with ourselves. Number 3, say you are sorry to others when you mess up. And number 4, keep practicing. Just do it again the next day. I have this little thing. I have a little Post-it here that says, be friendly, because I've been kind of a grouch lately. It's cold in Minnesota. It's January. Every time I go to the pool to swim, I've just come in from below 0 temperatures, and I'm getting in the pool and somebody's in the lane that I wanted, or some fantasy problem that I have in my head. And I find myself in a swimming pool being grouchy. And I have to check it and be like, what in the world is happening here? You have a swimming pool. You are swimming. There is no reason to be grouchy. It doesn't make sense. What are you doing? But I'm gentle with myself when I find myself being like that. And then I make the effort to change it. And I look at the little babies who are having swimming lessons, and I try to imagine the joy and glee that those babies and those parents are experiencing as they play in the water for the first time. But I have to work at it. And so do you. So I don't expect perfection. We all catch ourselves. But there's no way to master this in the human body. We all have problems. And in this human body, we're just going to have to keep working at it. Now, going back to the very first part that I talked about, yes, we're working at this because most of us are spiritual seekers. But even more so, if you're listening to the Yoga Therapy Hour podcast, it's about feeling better more of the time inside of yourself. It feels better to be friendly. It feels better to be appreciative. It feels better to be compassionate. There is research supporting that when we do those things, we actually have better health outcomes. And it also feels really great to have discernment and to get away from people that you have no business being with. It also feels really good to have the discernment to say, wow, this person is putting no energy into a relationship with me. I think I need to go find somebody who wants to be in relationship with me and spend my time and energy there where it will be returned and reciprocated. The clarity that this Yoga Sutra gives us, that puts our mind at ease and our heart in a peaceful state. And there's nothing better than that. You know, a lot of times myself, my friends, my colleagues, I come with the most ridiculous stories of how we've been treated and what they did. I mean, it is obvious that bait needs to be cut, but we have histories, we have memories, we have ups and downs with people for 40 years that we don't want to let go of. But what if you could just say, I'm going to create space for a week or a month or 2 months and see what happens. When I say cut bait, I don't mean forever, lock them out, you're done, goodbye, we're done. I just mean recognizing when there's been an energetic shift, or recognizing when things just aren't working very well, and having enough compassion for yourself and the other to recognize that and stop pushing and stop trying to force and just let it be what it is. So if we can do that without judgment, without bias, without story, without gossiping, without ruminating, that's when we are going to suffer less, and I think we'll have better relationships. I know there's many people that have this idea of unconditional positive regard. I first heard about it with I Rest Yoga Nidra. Can we have unconditional positive regard when we don't know what's happening with that other person, but we know we're not their priority, or we know that they're doing something we really don't want to be involved in? Just say, okay, you're over there, I'm over here. I have unconditional positive regard for you until you show me differently. And it's okay that we have space at this time. And then just see what happens. A lot of things within 4 to 6 weeks will resolve themselves. So if we can just keep working at Maitrī, friendliness, Karunā, compassion, Muditā, which is all about appreciation and gratitude, and Upekṣā, creating space and having discernment, our relationships are going to be so much better. We're going to find the right people who want to be in relationship with us, and we're going to have a more peaceful heart. So I leave you with Patanjali's Yoga Sutra 1.33. And I also wanted to tell you that in the year of 2025, Optimal State on Monday nights is doing an entire year around Patanjali's Yoga Sutra and emotional intelligence, where we, every Monday night, 44 of them, we cover a Yoga Sutra that pertains to something like I've just described. We do some asana, we do some pranayama, we do a yoga nidra meditation, and some people stick around and do some continuing education. But every month has a theme, and then we choose 4 sutras that go with that theme. So I invite any of you to start with us. We have a January, February, March, April, May. If you go to www.theoptimalstate.com, you'll see the Monday night classes, and you can sign up there, and we would love to have you. We have a wonderful community happening over there. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate you, and we will talk soon. Have a great start to your 2025. Thank you to our guests today. And if you've ever thought about being on the podcast, we would love for you to come and tell your story. This podcast is not just for the famous people or the people who've written a book. This podcast is for everyday people like me and you to tell our stories of health and healing and beyond as yoga therapy, and Ayurveda has helped us. So please feel free to contact me if you have a story you'd like to tell on the podcast about your journey. There would be nothing more pleasant and pleasurable than getting to interview you and have you on the podcast. Don't be shy. You can do it. We're waiting for you to call. Have a great week, everybody. Thank you for listening to the Yoga Therapy Hour. We wish you a wonderful week. We hope that somehow, in a small way, we've contributed to your well-being so that you can go out and share that well-being with others. That's what life is all about, bringing in the goodness through you and then shining it out to the world. We need you more than ever. So let's all get out there, do good, be good, and have a great week.